Okay, the Cleveland Browns are doing football things, and even though it's May 26th, some people are already annoyed, which is a way to go.
On brand.
Anyway, Bree is back, as you can hear. She has successfully conquered the world and has returned. And at one point,
I'm barely surviving. Don't let him fool you. Barely surviving.
That's a load of crap. But anyway, Bree, who has notoriously been trying to, be very even keeled and protective of herself. When I sent her the Za'Darius Smith trade to reference Seinfeld, she didn't say this, but this is sort of how I took it. It made it move. She was pretty excited about that one. So by all means, weigh in.
By all means, weigh in. What do you want me to say? I guess it was the shock and awe of when it happened, because it was unexpected. So unexpected things that I can't foresee coming tend to get me a little bit more excited because I like the surprise aspect of it.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Not to get into the in-depth psychology of why I respond the way I respond. No, I think it was a welcome surprise because it took me to a place of, okay, well, Andrew Berry is clearly not okay with just plugging holes. He is showing that he will go out, take some bigger risks. I mean, it's not really a risk per se, but make some bigger
That's part
splashes.
of why it's a good move, is that there is very little risk.
He's going to make some of these bigger splashes, and he's not done yet. So I like that attitude. I like the whole, like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this roster better and to give us every opportunity to be in a position to win football games. And I like that.
Yeah, to me, that move said, to me, Andrew Berry was saying, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs. I think we are in the playoffs, and we think we can do damage once we're there. That is how, and granted, look, this move makes sense no matter what. It just, if Za'Darius Smith drops dead tomorrow, this was still a good trade. Like, because you give up effectively a 5th-round pick for a guy you're paying like $11 million to, or whatever, however the contract broke down, with void years and all that crap. But averages 80 pressures a year and over 10 sacks in his last 3 healthy years. Like, there's really there's no downside. So it makes sense no matter when you do it, but certainly I think it announces that the Browns are saying, no, we're not, like, kind of hoping this is what we expect to happen.
Yes.
And then when we get there, we expect to be pretty good. His press conference after practice was entertaining to me on a number of levels, because Za'Darius Smith, we had a solid week, nothing but good about this trade, nothing but good. And then the next week we started getting reports, like Albert Breer was on one of the 92.3 shows. I think it was the afternoon show, and was said he wasn't really sure he's a team guy. Was asked if he was Jadeveon Clowney 2.0, didn't go there, but then that was inevitably sort of, is he Jadeveon Clowney 2.0? So when Za'Darius Smith was there on Tuesday, there's a level of excitement. Sure, it's May, the first day of doing stuff. You're always going to have that, but he was extra. He was coaching guys up. He wanted to talk to the media and all this stuff, and he wanted to sort of put on a show. And I'm hoping all of that is genuine, but I also think, like, he had certain answers very prepared for combating that notion that he's a bad teammate. And he may be 100% right. I don't know the answer to that. The only thing I can say is the Browns would have as much information as any other team that hasn't had him on their team to this point, because Kevin Stefanski still knows guys in the Vikings organization, and, Kwesi is the GM, and obviously he's close with Andrew Berry. So it's not like they're going to be like, they're not going to bullshit the Browns on who he is. So whatever he is, they feel good about it. So all of those things are interesting, but look, he's a big man with a huge personality. The thing that takes me is because he's so big and his smile is so big, he sort of reminds me of a Muppet in the way that it's just It's just huge. And I was at the Senior Bowl when he came out. He's a giant man. Like he's absolutely huge. But yeah, like I'm all for it. Like I love the guys who are excited to be here. I'm all about the guys who are like, can't wait to get to work, all the good things he said. And then look, I have zero issue with the guy defending himself against whatever. So, and it didn't feel combative. It just felt like he was ready to jump on those answers. So I liked his approach. I thought it was smart.
I agree. I actually liked that we got to hear from him and Juan Thornhill, which I know we're going to talk about here shortly, but I thought Za'Darius specifically was like pretty open and loose, I guess. You know, I think we are so used to hearing as Browns fans, the coach speak, the things that are more general answers, if you will. And he just kind of laid it all out there, which I respect. He talked about his contract. As you mentioned, he talked about, you know, defending his character a bit. And I'm okay with that. He talked about how excited he was to be here, to be paired with Myles Garrett. They're going to come up with a new nickname. You know, like that's all the crap that like the fans eat up, right? Like
Sure.
they can be the best duo in the league. You know, those are all things that you love to hear in the month of May before any football is being played, because those are things to look forward to. And, you know, we can hope that that transpires when we get to the actual season. And the fact that he also has the veteran presence, he comes with that mindset of like helping the younger guys. He has lofty goals in mind that he wants to achieve. I mean, he talked about the Super Bowl, which I know every team will say at this point that the goal is the Super Bowl.
He put things in order though. He was very specific.
He did. He said the division.
Super Bowl. He goes, no, the division first.
Exactly.
The Browns haven't won since the 80s. So yeah.
So I liked that. I liked that. Like that's where his mindset is. That's where his thinking is. I liked that he wanted to be in Cleveland. And that was a consistent theme with even like Juan Thornhill, like and I know we're going to get there and I can't wait to talk about him. But yeah, I think both of these additions to the roster and hearing them speak, like I'm actually really looking forward to watching them play and watching them do more press conferences. Like I'm all about this.
Yes. And I sympathize with his contract issue. It actually makes a lot of sense the way he explained
it. Like you typically don't hear players talk about their reasoning or like any really discussions about their contract. Like they're pretty private about those sorts of things.
Well, he clearly intelligent enough to know the ins and outs and invested in himself. Like, and
he talked about he talked too about like he's doing this for his family and his kids, and you know thinking about like the long term.
I really like this stuff about like him talking about how he wanted his kids to see him.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate and respect that a lot.
Right. Juan Thornhill. Listen,
the one and only.
As somebody,
listen, Pete. I know I'm supposed to be like even keeled and like level headed. I like might have to get his jersey.
Right. This is the thing though. Like, I've been a Juan Thornhill fan since he was at Virginia. He's out of Alta Vista, Virginia. I know all about him because I wanted the Browns to draft him in 2018, and they picked Greedy Williams. So I liked it. I liked that Andrew Berry is coming back and getting all my guys. They got Elijah Moore. That was one of my guys. They got Juan Thornhill. They got one of my guys. But like since Juan Thornhill has been here, he has been a guy who's just like all he's really said is we're going to win games this year, which I know that's controversial to say we're going to win games this year. That's bulletin board material for 31 other teams.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But he's been chided by people on social media, which is what prompted this conversation, his press conference about like, okay, like people are saying, well, the Browns haven't done this and that. Like his last 4 seasons, he has been in Kansas City. He doesn't know Cleveland at all.
He doesn't care.
And he's got 2 Super Bowls, which 2-0. Just Juan Thornhill by himself compared to Cleveland 2-0. We haven't even been there.
Yes.
And yet people are like, we've heard this before. Like, I don't care. And like, we've dealt with this before, but like, both fans and certain elements of the media, which this came up in his press conference, insist that players that come here pick up their baggage. Like, we want guys to be excited to come here, I think. And then we're like, but here's all this baggage you have to take. Like, that's not his mindset. And I don't want it to be his mindset. I don't want him to come in and immediately have his soul crushed by a city that just hasn't enjoyed much success. Like, that sucks. And so, like, he had this back and forth with Tony Grossi, and he's just like, look, I'm a positive guy. You know, all this, I'm gonna will it into existence. He laid out very, poignantly how he believes positivity sort of begets positivity. If you think you're gonna win, you believe you're gonna win, you're probably gonna win. And then
I like how it was pretty much like Tony arguing, like, let me give you all the reasons why you should actually be negative.
Well, he goes he was something along the lines of saying, I want the fans behind us. He's not like yelling at fans. He's just saying, I would like you to support our team. Please support our team. I think we're going to do some good things, and I would like you to be excited about us. Because as to his point, it makes us better, which I'm just reminded of how many home games where fans were at the stadium seemingly ready to be pissed at this team before the bad things happened. There was 2021 and 2022 in some ways, there was a feeling of this is going to suck. And then something would happen and you'd get, immediately booed. And we had this whole thing with Jedrick Wills. And he didn't say it right, but you could sort of sympathize with what he was talking about in terms of it sucks to be booed at home. And so he's going, I want these guys to be bored. And then immediately Tony Grossi's like, well, can you understand why, and it's just no, I don't understand. I don't want him to understand. I don't want him to think about, it's not Juan Thornhill has not been alive as long as the Browns have been losing. Don't put that on him. His whole thought process is I'm going to try to make everybody better. And I can tell you that that stuff matters when it's August and September and October and November, having somebody who's positive like that, because we all know somebody who is just an energy vampire like Tony Grossi, who just sucks the life out of you. And if you're already doing something that's physically grueling like this, and you're going out there every day and you're working your ass off like that, having somebody who's just constantly negative sucks. So I want the guy who, even if it's irrationally positive, I'm all for it, because there are guys who are going to respond to that. And I'm reminded way back when I went to the East-West Shrine game when it was still in Tampa. There was this running back named John Crockett who played at North Dakota State, and he was never had a bad day in his life. Just he's wired in a certain way where he's always smiling, always happy to be out there, and it's infectious. And I talk to this dude every day in part because he's just so happy to be doing this. My only issue with Juan Thornhill is if this disappears in August, or he's not Mr. Positive in October. But I don't get the sense that any of this is fake. I think that's just how he's wired. And you want those guys in the same way that the Browns need guys who are willing to kick them in the butt when guys aren't working hard. So as long as he's doing all the right things in terms of working hard and doing this stuff, I'm all for it, because it will work. I'm reminded of guys like Mac Wilson, who people adored here, who couldn't play, but still love the fact he got him hyped. Juan Thornhill can play. He started for 2 Super Bowl winning teams. He's good. This is the type of guy you want. And we're sort of in his prime, no less. And we're saying, do you really need to be excited at this point? Show me in September. Okay, are we allowed to have any fun with this? Is he allowed to have any fun? He just signed. He got the damn tattoo on his arm already. Let's let him enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. We as fans can be very, I don't know what the word is. Critical? Yeah, critical. Critical of everything. Critical of players that are too negative, players that are too positive, players that don't want to be here, players that give up in the middle of a play. With social media, that is all heightened, and it's easy to have players see those types of things, right? Like Juan Thornhill talked about the passionate fans, because obviously coming from Kansas City, very passionate fan base, as of recent with Patrick Mahomes, like very successful winning franchise. So those fans obviously expect to go into every game with Patrick Mahomes at the helm and win football games. Like when they look at every matchup, they think that they're going to win. As a Browns fan, I understand how we have been conditioned to feel the exact opposite, to not feel confident. We have had obviously the most ridiculous things happen to us to lose football games that we've been winning for majority of the game. And so I understand like Tony Grossi's point of view and why he would ask that question, or why I would keep peppering. But I guess my thing about that is, as you bring more and more guys onto this team and in this locker room, and even the coaching staff, like the coaching staff wasn't here for these decades of losing. Like they don't know what that feels like. They're not attached to that type of feeling. We shouldn't want them to have that type of mindset or that attitude. And Juan is exactly right when it comes to like thinking about the positivity and the mental aspect of the game. Like I agree with him. If you've ever been around a person that is extremely negative, it is draining. Like it will suck the life out of you. And to surround yourself with people that have the same mindset, like that's the place that you want our players to be in, to have that type of attitude. And, you know, he kind of did reaffirm, Pete, like outside of social media, because like, you know, people can see like what things are being talked about. And I don't know how often they're on social media, but, you know, a lot of them do interact and like they'll say, I mean, Juan, since coming to the team has been very vocal on social media. I mean, he's tweeted about it and what his observation has been. So we know he's there on social media, but he did talk about and confirm the type of feeling you get from the fans, like in the stadium and on game day and feeding off of that type of energy. And as you know, Pete, like our fans have a tendency to get really frustrated. They will boo. They will throw things, maybe. They will be very loud and make their feelings known. So I think as a fan, I don't understand why you wouldn't want players to have this type of positivity and be open about being that way and talking about it. Like players that want to be, or players that get tattoos, like that. This is exactly what we ask for. So let's embrace it instead of like being critical of it. Yeah.
So like, you know, with a guy like Juan Thornhill, or, you know, I mean, maybe he needs a hard knock speech. I don't know. But if Juan Thornhill is super positive and does all these things and the Browns win, everybody's going to be happy.
Right.
If Juan Thornhill is super positive or he never says a word and they suck, no one's going to come back and go, well, Juan Thornhill didn't say anything all offseason. We're not going to say anything about him. No, they're going to say, you guys suck. Like, there's no getting away from this. So, like, be who you're going to be and be authentic about it. And the other part of this is, like, we desperately want leaders on this team.
Yes.
And this is him leading. And you've seen him, like, take – in some of it's sort of, like, so sweet. It might give you diabetes, like when Greg Newsom's talking about, like, I'm not trying to leave here, and Juan Thornhill's like, not on my watch, and like that stuff. Like,
okay, that's just corny.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so like to a point where you're just like, all right. But even so, if that's who he is, then that's who he is. Again, as long as it's authentic, you're going to sort of like to have it. But if they lose, you're not going to care what anyone said in May. You're not going to care like how they were. All you're going to focus on is the fact that they sucked. You're going to be talking about firing guys, cutting guys,
right? Whatever.
So I'm all for it. So as long as you're going to be, positive, excited, fine. And to the same.
But Pete, could just for a minute though, I think from a fan's perspective, there's probably a portion of the fan base who were coming off of John Johnson, who was very similar when he joined the team in being the very vocal.
True.
Took that leadership presence, was really the sounding board for the defense, right, wrong, or indifferent. And he obviously was not productive in this system. So I feel like Juan is kind of getting almost a disadvantage because that's who he's backfilling. And
Mhm.
so it's like we've heard this before. Like, like it gets to be old when we have a revolving door with some of these defensive players that come in and they say these things and then they go out and it just fall flat completely. Obviously, I hope this is different. He's taking pride in being on this team, in the number that he picked, just everything about it. And listen, I hope it works in all of our favors, because that would be the best thing for all of us, is that something comes of all of the talk and the productivity is on the field. I mean, he obviously knows what it takes to win. So there's that.
And to anyone who feels like I want to see it in September, that's fine. Just don't tell him that. Like,
right. Let him live.
Yeah.
Let him
like
live.
that's ultimately the part. Like, anyone who says, show me wins, you're entitled. Just leave him alone. Let him do his thing. But it just sort of like to further that, it just sort of reminds me of the Cavs. Like, the Cavs this past season won 51 games, the first time they've gone over 50 since LeBron left in 2017, 2018. For the regular season, and it wasn't all great, but like for the most part, it was, this team's really fun. This team's really energetic. This team has personality. This team's exciting. All these other things, and everybody's loving this team until they get to the playoffs, and then 5 games later, they're the Browns, and everybody is like, won't say everybody, but there's a section of fans that'll just like treating them like frauds, or that they just aren't good, and that now they have to blow up the team.
Yeah, and then question if Donovan Mitchell wants to even be there.
Yeah, and like this is the kind, like, you listen to like morning radio, you're driving somewhere, and that's the conversation now. Well, does Donovan Mitchell even want to be here? And like here again, if you were as successful as the Cavs were, they got the 4 seed, and then they lose in the way they did, it almost doesn't count. And like, it's so, for a certain section of fans, I'm not saying this is everybody. I know Bree's sitting here going, I still like the Cavs. But
I do.
But like, there's a section of fans where the regular season for next year is already ruined. Like, the 82 games don't matter because now it's show me in the playoffs. Like, so now you're basically saying, well, for 82 games, that team shouldn't have joy and everything else because they didn't prove anything in the playoffs. Like, that's a really miserable way to ask an athlete to live. And you're just going to like grind them to dust. And again, make it so they don't want to be here. So we desperately want athletes to want to be here. We have these guys who want to be here. And then we're saying like, okay, be excited and be leaders and all this, but not like that. That's tough for me. So I get it, but it's tough. And that's the thing that's really frustrating, is like, you would love the Cavs to have done well in the playoffs and be like, this is something we can build upon and all this and the other, like the Browns did in 2020 when they, went to the wire with the Chiefs. But now it's like, it almost doesn't count. And like, that's on some level, that is a Cavs problem. That is the stuff they've got to figure out. Like, they've got things they have to improve, but that is also a look in the mirror problem. Where are we going with this, that we can like completely discount all of these things when the previous 4 seasons you didn't make the playoffs at all, you were in the lottery or whatever, and you're sitting there going, well, I just want us to be in the playoffs. And then when you get there and suddenly, okay, we're in the playoffs, now do something, and then it's not good enough, and suddenly it doesn't count.
Yeah, because we all want instant gratification. Because even if the Cavs would have made it out of the first round of the playoffs and they would have lost, say, in the second round, it would have been the same conversation, just would have happened a month later. So it is interesting because it's not easy to win a championship in any sport. It's not easy. And then you have teams that there are some that exceed expectations. There are some that are below expectations. There are some that probably do what they're supposed to do. But unless you end your season with the ultimate goal of winning a championship, like, no fan base is happy. Right? Like, I mean, like, and I get it. Like, I get it, because if you make it so far, and especially if you were exceeding expectations, like, you're ahead of where you're supposed to be, which I think is where we fall in the Cavs conversation, is I don't think really any of us expected to win over 50 games. I think we all thought that there'd be a chance they'd make the playoffs, but they'd be a lower seed. And so when they got to where they got to, it was like, oh, well, we have a solid path into the route to getting
Yes.
to a finals, especially like when you looked at the competition and then, Giannis being not 100% healthy. Like it was almost like we started thinking ahead, like looking past the Knicks of, hey, this path is actually going to be easier for us as fans specifically. Players don't do that. Like players definitely do not think that way. But yeah, and I mean, like Pete, like Giannis actually talked about that after they lost in the first round.
Got crushed for it.
He did get crushed for it. And look, you typically don't hear athletes of that status that are that good, like say things like that. But in a way, like I was very empathetic towards him because like, again, like it is so hard to win a championship. Like it's not on one player. It's not on one coach. Like you have to have everything working together at the same time, at the right time to really kind of hit that stride and make it all the way. But yeah, I think when it comes to the Browns, I could see this season kind of going that way for us where we maybe exceed expectations because I think right now expectations are pretty low because nobody knows what to expect from Deshaun Watson and his play. The roster is really good. Coaching, obviously, you would think got better, but I could see the same thing happening where we string along some wins, make it to the playoffs and potentially go out early. And again, it's like, we need to fire Kevin Stefanski. Like, I feel like I'm like seeing that in the future for us.
Yeah. And look, obviously, all Cleveland fans aren't all sports teams fans, but it doesn't help that the Browns are currently playing better than the Guardians. And it feels like
listen, I can't even when you talk about a team that came off of a season last year where you're like, all right, like they exceeded expectations last year. We had big plans for the Guardians this year, and it is not going as it should be.
Like that's the weird part about football and the way it works is because it is they want it to be a 365-day sport.
Yeah.
And it is. And then like the Cavs don't play well in the playoffs and they're out. And then the Guardians are not playing well for this extended stretch. And people are already talking about, how this is going. And suddenly it's like
trade everyone.
Come on, Browns, OTAs, pick me up. We've got to start winning.
Yeah.
We got to start winning games in May to make me feel better. Like it's just a tough road to hoe in that regard. So it's interesting that it's sort of working like that. So like,
but football too, it's obviously a shorter season, which I know it's getting longer as the years go on, but you can almost talk yourself into like in basketball and baseball, like, well, there's still time to turn it around because the season is just so much longer. In football, like there's just not that room for error because the season is so short and you have to win. There's a targeted number of games that you want to win in order to be able to make it to the playoffs. So I think that's where like being a Browns fan or being a football fan specifically, there's just so much pressure like week to week and so much disappointment when it comes to the losses, especially when you lose to teams that you shouldn't lose to.
Right. So it's May. Let guys who are
is it May?
Still, I know. Let the guys who are excited be excited for right now. Because if they win, you're gonna love the fact that they were super excited the whole way, and you're gonna feel like it was, this whole melding pot of guys who are super excited and dedicated and focused and all this. It's gonna be, mold into something good. And if they lose, you're gonna hate them anyway. So
don't hate them for being happy.
And look, it's 3.5 months, man. I got you got to help me out here. We can't make it if we're just gonna be here trashing guys for like being happy to be here and sort of be like
in the off season.
It's tough. It's tough. Anyway, hopefully Breeze,
save your hate for the season. Hey, Pete, I was sick on Friday night. I got hit with the stomach bug. And so, of course, I'm like trying to find anything to distract me from how sick I felt. And I was laughing because I was recovering on Saturday, horrible headache, like still not feeling 100%. And the freaking Browns Jets game was on the NFL Network.
It's been on like a lot.
I'll go and turn this game on. Like, why not make myself more sick with how this whole game like went and ended?
Well, listen, I mean, it gives you, 58 minutes of good stuff, and then you just turn it off, and you're like,
I was like, I can just act like they won. And hey, Elijah Moore was playing for the Jets, so that was kind of fun to watch. But that was the only time I watched it back. Remember, I told you, it's like I'm not going back and rewatching this game. I can't do it.
I love Elijah Moore. He talks as fast as he plays, and he's like so intense. It's hilarious.
I liked that the Puerto Rico trip happened. Like there, like, first of all, I have to laugh because I haven't really been on Twitter that much. I told you, I don't enjoy the platform as much anymore. But I did log on last night, and like the first thing I saw was like the slow motion video of Deshaun Watson throwing to Elijah Moore, or was it Cedric Tillman? I don't remember which one. But like it was, slow motion. The camera was on the spiral of the ball. And I was like, let me see how many men are salivating over this like one video. It did not disappoint. I was laughing. I was like, I love this time of year because it's just people posting videos from OTAs in slow motion and us getting very excited about it.
Well, I mean, there's that, but the play I've watched many times, sort of grainy. I question the investment that this particular flag football league is putting into their video. But what was this, a reverse?
No, it was Maddox actually screwing up. Like he went on the wrong side to receive the ball. And then kind of ran right into the defense. And then we were all like, just run straight. Like, don't go sideways. So then he broke free and he ran the whole length of the field to score his little touchdown. And I thought he was going to fall flat on his face in open space because he was like running so fast that like his body, like his upper body couldn't keep up with his legs, but he made it. And then the best part is, just so you all know what type of child I am raising, he wanted to celebrate doing the gritty, but he told us someone on the other team told him if he celebrated with the gritty, the other team would get a point. And he decided not to celebrate because he didn't want his team to lose a point. That was a complete lie, by the way. Like that wasn't actually going to happen. But my son chose his team over his personal celebration.
Well, there are a lot of players who don't do that and will take the flag. And in some cases, the way rules are changing would take the touchdown off the board.
Exactly.
But yes, that was good for him. And look, speaking of Juan Thornhill and his enthusiasm, nobody takes a back seat to one Maddox in terms of enthusiasm and pregame prognostication. I believe his quote was, "You don't need ankles to break ankles," as he, I don't know what I would call what he did, but nevertheless scored the touchdown with no one near him. He looked like Secretariat many lengths ahead of the field, flying down to score his touchdown.
And listen, he has his last games this week in big tournament. He won he won Player of the Week last Sunday for his stellar defense. Lots of flagpoles. He likes to play safety, much like Juan. Maybe I'll buy him the Juan Thornhill jersey. To show him how it's done. But yes, he is a big trash talker and one of the smallest kids on the field. So we'll see how that pans out for him.
Well, listen, if you're going to be small, you got to talk. You got to let him know you're not afraid. And
he does.
And he is not afraid. He is certainly enjoyable to watch on the flag football gridiron that there is. Anyway, hopefully Bree's schedule will continue to allow her to get closer to normal someday. For the moment, she's crushing it as multiple team moms / carrying a company.
Working without a boss. That's been fun.
But anyway, we'll be back next week somehow, some way. Obviously, the schedule is probably going to be a little weird, in part because of
you can blame me.
Well, I was going to blame the Browns OTA schedule and when we hear from media or when that stuff's available, because that may dictate when we have more stuff to talk about. But you're welcome to jump on that grenade. Beyond that, look, do us a favor, like, subscribe, do all those fun things, tell a friend, and help us keep this thing going. But we'll be back next week in some form or fashion.